Hello. Today, we're going to be looking at another movie based off a TV show. This time, the anime Toriko. Now, if you haven't heard of this show, I don't blame you, especially in the West, seeing how they kind of cut the dub short about roughly 50 episodes. Which is annoying because I actually really like the show. However, luckily for me, and a few other fans, the company Discotek actually released the movie over here on DVD. And since I actually kind of like this movie, and whenever I look up Toriko on YouTube, I see literally nobody talk about this movie. So, why not? Let's have some fun with this movie. Oh yeah, quick disclaimer, if you haven't seen the show, just like with the Teen Titans video I made, you will be very confused. Okay, now let's get into it. The movie begins with a creature called the Infinity being stolen at Gourmet Corp, and the person stealing it is, well, our villain of the movie, a character named Grimm. The other people at the Gourmet Corp try to stop him, but he literally proceeds to blow the roof off the place. He then goes on to let the Infinity be free just so it would guide him to a special ingredient. And once the bee gives him the right direction, he literally grows wings and then flies toward that direction he needs to go. After this, we cut to a sunflower field where we see a old woman just staring off into the distance. Trust me, she will become important later in the movie. After that, we get the opening title sequence where we get our full title of the movie, Toriko, the secret recipe of the gourmet god. After this, well, pretty fun title sequence, we see Toriko, Rin, and Komatsu at an amusement park called Sweetsland where everything is edible. And I literally mean everything. While there, they meet their friend Tepe from the IGO, who offers Toriko an assignment to find one of the world's greatest full-course menus, and with that, he excitedly agrees to the job and they head out. He even brings his giant pet wolf Terry with him. We then cut to a reporter named Tina who is about to do some investigative work, until her boss forces her to clean the storage room, which she quickly trips, falls, and destroys practically everything. In the rubble, she ends up finding a picture that piques her interest, that being a photo of Setsuno along with another woman that she hasn't quite seen before. We then cut back to Toriko on his way to find the secret menu of legendary chef Acacia. However, the trip doesn't go so well, seeing as how they fly into a storm and almost get eaten a few times, and once they get through, they almost hit a wall, but are thankfully able to land in the ocean sideways. Once they get out of the plane, they make a pretty interesting discovery once they see where they're going. That being that the entire island is under a giant silver food dome. Toriko tries to attack it from a distance to no avail. They end up trying to get closer to see if they could find another way in, and Komatsu ends up finding a secret passageway. When they get inside, they see this massive place filled with a bunch of living and well-grown ingredients, some of which were thought to be extinct, which they are nothing short of awed by. We then cut back to Tina interviewing Setsuno about the picture. She goes on to tell her that she was an apprentice of hers. However, before she can get any more answers, some minor characters come and interrupt her interview. Back on the island, we see them enjoying all the nice scenery and even all the special ingredients, some of which were thought to be extinct. However, after a while, they discover some ruins, which they quickly go to investigate. They eventually come across some interesting looking sunflowers that Tepe describes as little suns. Right as Komatsu goes to touch one, they get ambushed by a woman riding a giant cat. The woman's name is Ayame, and she said that she will harm them if they do anything to the flowers. But before they can explain that they're not here to fight, the Infinity from earlier in the movie shows up. And with that, the top of the dome gets broken open and Grimm makes his appearance. And it also turns out that Ayame seems to have known him in the past. Everyone proceeds to fight him thinking he's here for the flowers, but he claims he wants something else. And with that, he proceeds to fight them all off one by one effortlessly and blows up the entire shrine the same way he blew up that building at the beginning of the film. But before the explosion can kill them, their animal friends come in to rescue them at the last second. We then see that the sunflowers are being used to power something on the island. But what exactly it was, we will learn later. Later on, we see Aime cooking food for Toriko and Komatsu, mostly out of gratitude for Komatsu saving one of the sunflowers. She then goes on to say how the sunflower's purpose was to power what was basically a cooling facility for a very dangerous ingredient, and now that the flowers are all destroyed, the place is thawing out and whatever's inside is about to be set free. However, things get worse when they get ambushed by GT robots. And while that's happening, we start to see the cooling facility starting to break down due to the lack of energy from the sunflowers. During the fights with the GT robots, we see them doing pretty well against them. However, Komatsu isn't really much of a fighter and is almost about to get killed by one, but thankfully their friend Coco comes in to lend a hand. We then see Rin and Teppei also being attacked by these robots, but also just like the other team, they get assistance, this time by Sunny. During the fight, Ayame abruptly turns into an old woman to Komatsu's surprise, but once all the fighting is over, she does explain there was something on the back of her neck that kept her young all this time, but unfortunately, the movie doesn't really do a good job explaining it. We cut back to Setsuno's restaurant where we see some of the older members of the IGO asking for her help to fight Grim, probably for old time's sake. Back on the island, Ayame does try to explain the backstory of the villain, however it's kinda rushed and even she doesn't know why he turned evil, so hey, less stuff for me to explain. On the way back, they do eventually meet up with their other allies, and Ayame abruptly turns young again. One of them asks for an explanation, but Toriko says that would take too long to explain, which kinda makes me laugh how the movie itself doesn't even want to explain it. At the freezing unit, we see Grim take his helmet off, finally showing his face, and from a distance, Sunny tries to attack him to no avail, leading to the other three trying to fight him, and despite not doing much damage, the fight here is really entertaining, and like I said, they don't do much, but just seeing all their different attacks is honestly kind of fun to see in this movie. And seeing him block them all effortlessly makes it even more fun just to show how much of a threatening villain he is. Out of nowhere, a bug comes crashing through the ceiling, and it's a member of the Gourmet Corp that we saw earlier in the movie, or to be more specific, the beginning of the movie, and he's here to fight Grim again. And it goes about the same as it did the first encounter, so why did they even bother having him come back in this movie? Anyways, after his failed attempt, the other three do try to fight him again to, once again, no avail. And unfortunately, they took too long to fight him because whatever was inside that freezer, it's slowly starting to come out. And what comes out is a creature that's so big that even mountains are smaller than its hands. And Grim goes on to describe this thing as a wolf fire dragon. Just for, well, things to be easier for me, I'll just call it a wolf dragon. As the wolf dragon goes on to attack, they are saved at the last second by their friend Zebra. And even Teppei points out he wasn't exactly invited to this expedition unlike the others. But frankly, I'm just happy to see the four Heavenly Kings to get ready to fight. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you've never watched the show, you'll probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Outside the island, we see the IGO heading their way, but unfortunately they get attacked by the Gourmet Corp and their army of GT robots, which leads to an honestly entertaining fight with all the old people fighting this army. It doesn't really contribute much to the story, it's mostly there for entertainment, like everything else in this movie. Back at the main fight, we see our heroes try to face this thing. However, when it looks like they did some pretty decent damage, it starts absorbing the life force of the forest and practically heals itself, so this ain't gonna be an easy fight. After a pretty dumb attack strategy of attacking one by one, where even Ayame gets reverted back to her old form again, they decide to get the, I don't know, bright idea to just combine all their power scare to take this thing out. And when they do, it looks like it works. However, it gets back up, and it looks like they've more or less just weakened it, if anything. But it turns out, this is what Grim wanted all along, because now that's weak and not really able to fight back, he proceeds to eat the entire thing whole. The explanation he gives is that he stopped eating long enough just so he can have enough, empty stomach to do it, but I don't know, it's kinda weird, but at least he gets a cool power form out of it. And just like all their other times fighting this guy, they go to face him. Again. They already failed twice, and they're already weak from fighting a giant monster. When will they learn to just give it up already? After everyone was beaten up, obviously, we see Komatsu and Ayame try to talk some sense into him, but since he's already too mad with power, he practically tries to kill them, and Toriko, with the last of his strength, takes the blast. And with that, Toriko is literally about to die. However, Komatsu and Ayame get the idea to use a drop of nectar from the sunflower to revive him, which kind of makes sense. I mean, these things were used the power of freezing you to hold up a giant monster, so why wouldn't it have the strength to revive someone? And with that, Toriko himself gets his own power-up form, which kind of looks like a Super Saiyan, but not. Either way, this gives Toriko the power to defeat Grim. And with the fighting over, we see that Grim was also using the same technique as Ayame to stay young. And since he's not much of a threat anymore, they use another drop of the sunflower, that being the last of it, to revive him. And with that, him and Ayame reconcile. And another good thing that ends up happening is that the flower, once it dies, it sprouts a bunch of seeds, reviving the island. After that, the IGO finally makes it to the island, and one of them points out the writing on the ancient ruins that they saw earlier, and on it is the secret to the special menu that they've been searching for at the beginning of the movie. And what is it? It pretty much says that the best food you can have is the food you share with everyone around you. And with that, the ruins turn into a giant grill. So, for fun, they all decide to gather ingredients from the island and fry them all up, leading to a giant feast where everyone is happy. Once everyone's done eating, everyone says their goodbyes, and Grim and Ayame decide to stay on the island and look after it. And with that, the movie comes to a close with them watching over the island in their younger forms. And that concludes my video on Toriko the movie. Needless to say, if you're a fan of the show, you will have a great time. If you're not, you will be very confused and probably hate it. And since I don't really see myself talking about the show on its own anytime soon, if at all, let's go into a little brief history about this show's release on home video, at least in the West. Okay, now let's get into the physical release of the show. The show was originally released in 4 parts, each one roughly containing 13 episodes apiece. Then when those stopped coming, they started releasing these. Pretty much these are the same as the parts, just like with 2 parts in one. Like this one here is 1 to 26. And I love the slipcover because it's like, I don't know, like I love the way this is detailed. And here's the DVD. And like, well, what I prefer, 4 discs. And thankfully the episodes print on the back. Also, one of these postcards for Funimation DVDs, which I never once filled out. Throw it in the comments, let me know if you've done this, and if so, what did you even get out of it? So yeah, there was this one. Then after that we got part 2, which is pretty much just parts 3 and 4. Same deal, slipcover with cool details on the inside and out. Usual stuff, except this time the discs, I don't know why, in the first one they were like up and down. Here, just, they actually have some in the back. It's kind of weird. Then after that, we kind of got nothing for a long time. I mean, we did get a new DVD set, however, it was just all 4 collections in one box set. It was nothing new. Then out of nowhere, Discotek decided to release the movie over here in the West. Heads up, this is not dubbed in English, it's just the film in Japanese. Strangely enough, the reason I even know about Toriko is because of the big crossover it had with One Piece and Dragon Ball. And because I saw that special, I found this at a DVD store and decided to get it, when my journey with Toriko just started there. Until it abruptly ended. I mean, they did sort of bring it back, like they did dub the crossover. Well, half of it at least. The one episode was a One Piece episode, and the other one was a Toriko one. And since they stopped dubbing the show by then, yeah, I was kind of annoyed they only did half of it. But I'm grateful for what we have. Sort of. All these DVDs are out of print at the moment, which is annoying because I feel like more people should see this show. Nonetheless, I thank you for watching. Take care.